Today I'm covering a game of my own from 10 years ago. This game was played in under 18 Serbian Championship. It was last round and I needed a draw to get a bronze medal. My opponent needed a win to get the bronze medal, so it was an interesting game. And let's see how it went. I played e4 because I was an e4 player back then. And my opponent always plays c5, so I knew what to expect. I went for this because I knew he plays knight c6, and now I went bishop e5. My idea is to take on c6, damage his structure, and play a similar position like Rosolimo in the Sicilian. But only I would be able to push f4 early, and then put the knight on f3. So he played d6, I took, and played f4. He played g6 to develop, because if he tries with e6, then he's closing the bishop, and also there's always the danger of me pushing e5 and breaking up the pawns. For example, if something like this happens, then e5 would be potentially dangerous structure-wise for black. So he tries with g6, and I went knight f3, bishop g7, d3, stabilizing the center, and knight f6. I castled, and he played rook b8. He wants to disrupt my development. I wanted to go bishop e3, but now b2 pawn is hanging, so I need to rearrange my pieces so I can get my bishop out. I played queen e2, and now he castled. I went back to d1 to defend on b2 in case the bishop goes out, but now also he goes knight e8, attacks my b2 pawn, but now I played c4, defending the third time on b2, but maybe it was better just to play normally knight e3, or just bishop e3, because the pawn is actually not hanging, because if bishop b2, then I could pin him with rook b1 and he cannot move back because the rook on b8 is hanging. So c4 was maybe unnecessary, but also it is pointed towards some d5 push in the future, because if he pushes d5 now, c5 will be fixed as a weakness, and that would be good for me. So he just continues knight c7, heading towards e6. I played bishop e3, and now he plays f5. He tries to open up the position because he has a bishop pair, and open positions, of course, suit the side with the bishop pair. I played rook b1. I want to free my knight from d1 to go to f2 eventually. He goes to e6, and now I took on f5 and played g3. It seems like I'm holding everything, and it is like that. I'm doing pretty well in this position, but I'm not better. The position is quite equal. He went knight d4, and here I chose to give up my remaining bishop, because I thought that in this position, if I would take on d4 with the knight, he would just capture with tempo, and if I go back, let's say bishop d2, then with c5, I was scared of bishop b7, queen d7, queen c6 combinations, and this diagonal seemed really vulnerable in that case. Maybe I could arrange something like knight f2, knight e4 to block it, but in the long run I didn't like it so much. So I took with the bishop on d4. He took back with the pawn. He didn't want to give up his bishop. Knight f2 was played, and rook f8. And now I'm attacking on e7, gaining some time. He went bishop f6, and now I went knight e4. I want to eliminate at least one bishop, so I get a more comfortable game in the future. He plays bishop g4, and now I took on f6. Also, I could play knight f2, go back, but I chose this one. It's okay. He took with the pawn, and now I cannot take on d4 because of the pin, so I played h3, giving up this pawn for that pawn. He took on h3, and now I took on d4. He pinned me, but I went queen f2, defending the knight. And now he tries to compete for the open e file. Rook f8, and now I play b3, because now his threat was to exchange rooks and take on b2. So I defend the pawn, or just push it with b3, and now bishop d7 goes back. And now I played knight f3, hoping to exchange queens. And this was unnecessary, because I could have played a move like f5, and in case he takes on f5, then I would have knight e2. And I would head towards f4. If we exchange queens, then it's even better, because there's no danger, and this extra pawn on the f file is not useful, because the knight is going to f4 and he's going to block that extra pawn. And also, if f5 happens, if he plays c5, I have this interesting option of fg6, and in case of cd4 I can take on f6, and here I have at least a draw, because if he takes, I can take and give perpetual with queen f6, queen g6, and back and forth. So f5 was a good practical decision here to make. But I didn't do it. I wanted to simplify the position with knight f3, but then I realized that after bishop f5, which he played in the game, and now I get into a slightly passive position. And I exchanged and went rook e1, further simplifying the position. He took, and he went queen a5. Because if he took on f2, I think I will be doing fine, because I would be able to stop any passed pawn on the king side, while I would also create something on the queen side with a3, b4, even d4, activate my knight, and so on, or just first play king e3, knight f3, and start pushing on the queen side. So he chose wisely, and he played queen a5, and now I play queen e3. It was better just to play knight f3, because if he takes on d3, then I have queen e3. I attack the bishop, and also I want to play queen e8. And if he goes back or plays something like this, then I have queen e8 check. And if this happens, queen e7, and then I can choose. Do I want to take on d6, on a7, something else maybe knight h4? It's not clear, but I think it was much better to play like this, activating my knight, and also heading towards d4 or h4, probably d4, and also I want to go queen e2 or queen e3, and it would be much better, because black also has some weaknesses on a7, d6, so he has to be careful about those. Instead I went queen e3, but he plays king f7, stopping my entries on e8 or e7, and here I went back, because I need to defend the a2 pawn. And now he is slowly putting some pressure on me, putting me in some kind of Zugzwang, not a total Zugzwang, but it becomes really tough to pick a move. And now I'm only left with my king. I played king g2, and he plays h5, fixing my pawns on the king side, not allowing me g4, and also in case the king runs towards h6, maybe he wants to play h4 at some point and to run towards h5. I played queen e3, and now he blocks with c5. I went back, and now he plays a5. Again, he is trying to fix my queenside pawns. Now you see, he's holding my 4 pawns with his 3 pawns, and those 3 pawns have the potential of becoming the passed pawn, which in this passive position for me it would be really dangerous. I played queen e3, I don't have anything smarter to do. Queen a1, and now I went back to d2. He went bishop d7, wants to switch diagonals, he wants to go to c6, maybe, and here I took on a5. Currently I'm a pawn up, but it doesn't mean much in this position because my pawns are just too far from motion, and his bishop and queen as a combination seem much more potent. I played queen b2, and now I made a mistake. I played king f1. Instead, I should have played king g1. And in case he plays... I was afraid of this move, but I could just play knight g2, and after bishop h3, which was my concern because bishop c6 leads to queen c7 and losing the bishop. So bishop h3, queen c7, king g8, and I give this check. Queen h7, and now I give this check. And go to e4. And if he takes on a2, then I have this move, which is unpleasant for black. And now I think that he has to satisfy with a draw, but I don't know how is he going to draw. I think just in this position he has to repeat with king h8, probably. But even here, queen e4 looks quite dangerous. So I guess here bishop h3 was better to play. Not allowing any knight g2. Because once I get knight g2, I always have that knight h4 in the pocket. So bishop h3 is much better here. And I would just give check on c7, king g8, queen b8, and now I would, if he tries to escape to h6, I would go queen e4, and I think this is okay for me. Because again, I'm threatening to go knight g2 and knight h4, like in the previous variation. Or just go queen e8 to give checks on the back rank. But instead, I went king f1, allowing this move. And now my g3 pawn is quite shaky. I cannot defend it properly, and also there is a checkmate threat, bishop h3. So I went with queen c7. I didn't know what else to do. And he went king e8. And here I gave a check, which was a mistake. Here I should have played knight g2, but I was not even considering this move because it seemed so scary to allow pinning like bishop h3, but apparently after queen c6 it's only a draw because I will give checks as much as I want. King e6 doesn't help because of queen e4. And if he goes to f8, I have these checks. If he goes to h6, then I have queen a8, defending on g2. And also I want to go queen h8 to deliver checkmate. If he tries g5, I don't think it works. Because I can just take, and if king takes, then his king is in the open. It doesn't work. And also I can just wait with queen f3. It's not a big deal. And if he takes with the f pawn, then I can play queen f8 and maybe capture on d6 with check if he allows me to. So that was my chance to repeat moves, let's say. But I played queen b8. Here he played king e7, and here I played queen b7. But now he takes on g3, and now his h-pawn is really, really dangerous. My only hope is to give some checks to disrupt his king. He plays king f8, and now I gave one more check, king g7, queen e4, and now he's running to h6. And here I went king e2, trying to escape to d2 and to the queen side. And now he plays a bad move. He plays bishop g4, which is paradoxically drawing the game. Bishop g4 leads the game towards the draw. Here he should have played h4 just. And if I try to give checks now with queen h8, now he's escaping with king h5, and he goes to g4, h3, and he zigzags and escapes those checks. And his h-pawn is going to be deciding. But instead he plays bishop g4. And here I made a mistake, a final mistake. I played king d2. Instead, I should have played knight f3. And now, after h4, now he cannot avoid checks because his bishop is in the way. His bishop is in g4 and he's totally blocked by it. So his only chance to keep on playing is to take on f3, but I think this queen ending is quite equal, because I also have my passed pawn and it's a queen ending, so the probability of giving perpetual is high. So I think I would have good chances to make a draw here. But instead I played king d2, which seemed more natural, but it was just losing on spot. Queen f2, king c1, and now bishop f5. And after queen e7, he first took on f4 and went h4 to free his king for king g5 or king h5. So if I take on f6, he has this discovered check and he takes my queen. So I couldn't even do that. I went queen e2, but now he just pushes his pawn. It's a very simple conversion. I played queen f3. He didn't even take it because I think it's even queen takes f3 is winning, but he didn't want to risk that much because queen g5 is enough. Queen f2 was played, and now queen h5, supporting his h-pawn, and he's ready to push. Queen f4, king g7, and now I cannot even take on d6 because he has this check, and I'm losing the knight with check. Because if I go to c3, queen e1 is check, and if I go to the first rank, that's also a check. So I went knight f3, but now queen g4. Now he's ready for an exchange, and now I avoided it with queen e3. But now he goes king f7, stopping it. easily. And after queen f2, he went for queen f4, pinning my queen. And after queen e2, bishop g4, I resigned in this position because I'm losing my knight and there's no point in fighting any further.